Ever since ancient humans got a little bit intelligent and realized that they could build different types of weapons, they started a war. But it's not like before humans there weren't any wars, because there have been wars going on for millions of years by different species and animals. Like for example, ants have been having a world war for millions of years, and they have not made a peace deal. If you don't believe it, we've made a video on it if you would like to see it. But as time moves forward, humans got more sophisticated in their weapons, so they would get damaged less and do more damage to the enemy in return. It started from sharpening a stone all the way to the atomic bomb which we have today. Humans got so advanced and brutal with their weapons that people started to complain, and it was so gruesome that they had to put a limit on it and make some of them illegal. And now they're known as banned weapons from warfare. Let's start off with the small ones. Lasers. Not the lasers you see in the movies, but lasers that are attachments for people's weapons, and they're basically meant to blind the enemy. And after 20 years of debating, the United Nations finally made this weapon attachment illegal. And their belief is that there shouldn't be a weapon that only blinds the enemy. You might say a bullet will blind a person, and it will actually kill them next to blinding them. But why is that legal while lasers are not? The United Nations says the reason lasers are illegal is because they're only designed to blind the enemy, and you're just gonna have a lot of blind people because of this. The next weapon that's illegal in warfare is a very famous one called ricin. If you've ever seen the TV show Breaking Bad, you're very familiar with this poison, a very deadly poison that could kill you with 1/10 of a milligram. But why 1/10 of a milligram? That's because if you use more, they instantly die, but when you use a little bit of it, the person slowly dies. They first get very sick and get flu-like symptoms, and eventually their organs start to fail. This poison is known as an assassination drug because it has been used plenty of times in assassination. And the main reason that it's very illegal is that it does not poison the person immediately. And when the person does end up dying from ricin, you can't find a speck of it in their body. It's interesting to know Saddam Hussein in the 1980s, while he was having a war with Iran, he decided to put ricin in his bullets. But he realized that that wouldn't work because when you shoot it, it's not effective anymore. Either way, this is a very dangerous, illegal poison. We have one that's worse. Mustard gas, and it's known as one of the worst poisons you can use on your enemy. Mustard gas has a very long history because it started being used in World War I, when scientists and soldiers had no idea how toxic and dangerous it is, but either way, they used it without any caution. Even the soldiers that used mustard gas against the enemies were poisoned themselves because they didn't have proper masks and they didn't know what it is. Back then they didn't even care, they just wanted to eliminate their enemy. But just imagine how terrifying and terrible it is that in 1925 they made mustard gas banned in warfare when nothing else was banned during that time. But when you ban a weapon like this, it doesn't mean that nobody's gonna use it, because it was used plenty of times after World War I. It was used in World War II, the Vietnam War, and it was finally used in the Iran-Iraq War by Saddam Hussein. And if you would like to know more about mustard gas, we have a complete video about it. Another weapon that has been used for centuries is biological weapons. This was actually started by Genghis Khan. He would get an army of very sick people that have been affected by a type of pandemic or a virus, and he would take them next to his enemies and launch them towards them so they could get infected and kill off an entire army or an entire town or city he wants to take over. This was an extremely brutal method in taking over a town, which the Mongols used throughout history and some. You could say this was the first biological weapon, but when you get to the modern age, there are biological weapons probably in laboratories being kept safe, but you and I don't know anything about them because they don't let news out. But it's so dangerous that if you use it in the modern age, there's a chance that it could actually kill everybody. so they are terrified to actually use it on their enemies. But other than the dangers of it, it's still illegal. But you could guarantee that some governments do have something like this stored. It's kind of like mustard gas in World War I, where the users of the mustard gas were killed plenty of times because the gas itself would flow back to them, especially on a windy day. But later on, they learned to use mustard gas without damaging their own army. In the year 1980, the United Nations decided to ban a very ancient style trap system that was used in warfare. The trap called the punji stick, which was used by the Viet Cong in Vietnam War. The Viet Cong would dig out a ditch complete for a body. Then they would sharpen bamboo sticks and make them look like swords, put it on the bottom of it sticking up, and then they would take grass-like leaves and stuff to cover the hole. So when an American soldiers would pass by, they would fall into the trap and die with these sharp sticks. You could kind of refer to this as an ancient landmine. And this is a good point to mention landmines, because the next illegal weapon in warfare are landmines itself. I don't think you can find a person that does not know what landmines is, because it has been used in almost every modern war. And nowadays, there are still tens of millions of landmines that are active around the world. If you take a look at this list, these are the countries with the most active landmines in the world. In first place, you have Egypt, but why is that? Egypt has 23 million landmines because of World War II, and the Allies put it there, so the Axis powers could not go from Egypt to the Middle East, and most of those mines are still active. Up next, you have 16 million mines in Iran. And that was all because of the Iran-Iraq war, and you can find it next to the border. Afghanistan is in third place with 10 million active mines, and you can see the list now: Angola, China, Iraq, Cambodia, Bosnia, Kuwait, and Vietnam. When you look at Bosnia, it's a very small country, or Kuwait is even smaller, but Bosnia has 6 million and Kuwait has 5 million active landmines. So you could say most of the land has a lot of mines. Bosnia has a lot of landmines because of the Yugoslavian war, and Kuwait has a lot of landmines because of the Persian Gulf War in the 90s. You can always find the negative effects of Saddam Hussein. The next illegal weapon is white phosphorus. And unfortunately, we had news that Israel used this yesterday on Gaza. The Israeli Defense Force denies any usage of white phosphorus, but a lot of news outlets say so. News outlets like Reuters, NBC, and Human Rights Watch. And they have announced that Israel used white phosphorus. You could count white phosphorus as a form of fire bombs. They explode mid-air, and when they land, they catch everything on fire. And unfortunately, like a lot of illegal weapons, it kills more civilians than soldiers. Alongside that, the weapon is extremely brutal as well because it burns people alive. And since it's fire, and if you're in a dry environment, it keeps expanding and going to the nearby cities and villages. It's truly brutal to use a weapon like this because it kills everybody in that environment, not just the army. The next type of illegal weapon is cluster bomb. Just like white phosphorus, cluster bombs kill more civilians than actual soldiers, because when they explode, from every direction they start exploding and sending shrapnel everywhere. When an actual military man or a terrorist sees a bomb like this coming down, they know what it is, so they get better cover. But a civilian doesn't actually know what it is, so the chances of them getting hit is much higher. And that is one of the reasons that cluster bombs are illegal in warfare. We want to announce the last illegal weapon in warfare, but we're kinda scared. VX. VX is a terrifying chemical agent that instantly kills an entire population in a certain area. When it enters a person's lung, it makes it very hard to breathe, and the person collapses. And eventually, it causes organ failure, killing a person in less than 10 minutes. It's so brutal that even when it was legal, it was used just once. And that's by this guy, which we've mentioned plenty of times in this video. He used it on the city of Halabja in eastern Iraq, and the pictures are so brutal that we can't show it. Since the pictures are very graphic, when you search it on Google, they're mostly censored. And this is how it looks like when you search it. Even though you can actually click it and view the image, we suggest you don't do it because it's not a pretty sight. Just imagine an entire city with tens of thousands of people were sprayed with a pesticide and they all died. In the case of Halabja, there was 10,000 people that died because of the VX chemical. Every day we move forward and we hope for peace, but the more we learn about history, it seems like finding peace is more difficult than we think.